What is something a high school teacher told you, that you will never forget? On September 11th, while classes were all but cancelled, most teachers just rolled in TVs and left the news on. Not Jim R. He got up and lectured, to the groans of students. He talked about the effects this would have on the economy, our politics, our culture, and society. And he was right. In somewhat broad strokes, of course. But this was literally hours after the towers collapsed. When so much was still unknown, frightening and tragic. It really gave me what I would consider a solid base of understanding the things that would come in the next decade. He talked about how traveling would change with restrictive security measures, how politics would take advantage of terrorism, how the wars we will engage will be paid for by my generation, my kids' generation, and so on. He talked about how racism will spike toward Middle Eastern peoples out of anger and fear, and how that is totally wrong. As a vet and former cop, he cautioned us to not join the military while emotions ran high and a sense of patriotism was thick in our veins. It was a gift. As the years went on, WMDs, the Iraq War, TSA, Department of Homeland Security all came about. I felt like I already knew. I will never forget that fourth period class. I had an English teacher my freshman year of high school who was one of the rare adults that treated all of his students with respect while at the same time challenging us to do better. I distinctly remember him telling our class, "You are not as mature as you think you are, but you are more mature than your parents give you credit for." He also told us about an agreement/rule he had with his own kids. He understood how hard it was for kids to do the right thing in the face of peer pressure. So he had told his kids that if they were ever in a situation, underage drinking, drugs, whatever, where they knew they shouldn't be, they could call, and using an previously agreed upon code word that was banal and unsuspicious, he would know he needed to go get them and be the bad guy. He would show up, Uncle Buck style, and get them out of wherever they were. This would allow them to save face with their friends, and there would be no consequences for being the situation in the first place. Our class was supposed to be reading 1984. One day I showed up to class and our teacher hit us with a pop quiz on the previous night's reading assignment. I had not done the reading, so I was completely unprepared. I did my best to guess the answers on the first couple of questions, but after that, I knew it would be obvious that I didn't do the assignment, so I started writing my answers as observations about the book. My last answer was along the lines of, "This book is boring," or "This book is weird." When I got my quiz back, he had written, "How would you know? You haven't read it?" I saw that and knew I was going to prove him wrong. That night I sat down and read the whole book with the intent of coming to class the next day and telling him why it was weird and boring. Instead, I liked the book and I came to class and told him what I would have done differently / the same as the main character. He challenged some of my thoughts and I had to do some introspection. I appreciated that he called me out and that he didn't dismiss me when I came back after reading the entire book. From then on, I always made sure I was prepared for assignments. It has paid off in my career when I have been challenged in my work. I have been able to point out why I came to the conclusions that I did and have earned the respect of many people in my company as a result. In my childhood, only one person ever tackled my mother about her abuse of me and my siblings. It was Parents' Day and my bitch of a mother, as usual, turned up to take the credit for my being top of the class again. At one point there was just me, my bitch of a mother, and Mrs. Soames, physics teacher, in the lab. Mrs. Soames quite calmly challenged her, saying, "Mrs. XXXXX, why do you treat Tom Stotie the way you do? She's a good girl and doesn't deserve it." To my astonishment, my evil bitch of a mother was speechless. No one had ever confronted her before and she just didn't know where to put herself. It was easy for the other teachers and pupils to make snide, patronizing remarks about this cow to me. A 13-year-old girl isn't in a position to do anything about it, and I'm guessing they were trying to ease their consciences about the fact that they were too cowardly to intervene. but Mrs. Soames has been a role model for me ever since, and an unforgettable example of those people brave enough to tackle a bully in the presence of their victim. To have someone stand by you when you are vulnerable, and make their support for you clear, I can't tell you how that changed my view of other people. Our class was supposed to be reading 1984. One day I showed up to class and our teacher hit us with a pop quiz on the previous night's reading assignment. I had not done the reading, so I was completely unprepared. I did my best to guess the answers on the first couple of questions, but after that, I knew it would be obvious that I didn't do the assignment, so I started writing my answers as observations about the book. My last answer was along the lines of, "This book is boring" or "This book is weird." When I got my quiz back, he had written, "How would you know? You haven't read it?" I saw that and knew I was going to prove him wrong. That night I sat down and read the whole book with the intent of coming to class the next day and telling him why it was weird and boring. Instead, I liked the book and I came to class and told him what I would have done differently / the same as the main character. He challenged some of my thoughts and I had to do some introspection. I appreciated that he called me out and that he didn't dismiss me when I came back after reading the entire book. From then on, I always made sure I was prepared for assignments. It has paid off in my career when I have been challenged in my work. I have been able to point out why I came to the conclusions that I did and have earned the respect of many people in my company as a result. I went to 13 years of Catholic school. My dad was agnostic, but my mom was from a large Catholic family, even though she wasn't particularly devout herself. I was an altar boy, went through the relevant sacraments, earned the Cub Scout and Boy Scout medals for Catholicism, and all that jazz, even though I didn't particularly have strong feelings one way or the other. It's just what everyone I knew did. In order to graduate, every student had to have an exit interview with the school priest to discuss your future as an adult in the church. I walked in for mine, and Father T just stared at me for a minute, and then said, "Enrith, let's be honest and not waste our time. We both know that you aren't really a believer and have no intention of continuing in the faith when you leave." I was shocked. I had never said a word to anyone that would indicate this, I just never really gave it much thought. I pointed out that I'd done all the things that had been expected of me. I was a good kid, didn't drink, didn't fornicate, hell, I didn't even take the Lord's name in vain at that point. I asked him why on earth he would say that about me. He said he just had a hunch, and was he wrong? I thought about, decided he was right, and never looked back. So I have a priest to thank for showing me that not only had I lost my faith, but that I may have never had any to begin with. Our physics teacher used to give us tricky questions after explaining concepts to get us used to solving them. In one of the questions I found his answer to be wrong and corrected him. He listened to me but couldn't find where he went wrong. It turned into a debate with each of us trying to convince the other. Every time I tried to convince him I had the lingering doubt, what if I'm wrong? What if I made some careless stupid mistake which gave me the wrong answer? The only reason I still had the courage to hold my own view was the teacher himself. He never dismissed my question, never treated me like an ignorant kid questioning his teacher who knew better. By the end we had run out of time as the class had ended. Most of my classmates were either trying to convince me he was right by quoting his initial explanation verbatim or expecting me to be proven wrong. Even if I was right, I was expecting him to either ignore my question or to skip past it. But in the next class he not only told the class I was right, he explained where he went wrong in his initial explanation and turned it into a teaching moment where he showed us that anyone could make mistakes but wisdom lies in fixing them. He later told me that even if I were wrong, what I did was right, that I should never hesitate to question anything or anyone as long as I do it in a respectful and courteous way. That lesson never left me, and I just hope that whenever I question something, disagree with someone, or I am proven wrong, I can do it with enough grace and humility to make him proud. This one is really fucked up. Junior year we had a math teacher we all made fun of because she was a masculine lesbian. I never did myself, but I laughed at the jokes about her and never spoke up or called anyone out, so I consider myself guilty of it. This was 2003 and the height of South Park/Family Guy type humor for a teenager, where everything was funny if it was racist or sexual. Anywho, she was gone for like 3 weeks. We had a sub come in and no one knew what happened to Miss Forrest. She finally came back and looked horrible, like 20 pounds lighter than she already was, greasy hair, bags under her eyes. She looked dead. She started in on our lesson, with the overhead projector that she still preferred, and put the pen down and told us her girlfriend lost their child and that's why she was gone. She told us how she knows everyone made fun of her about how she's some mean manly lesbian, but she tried hard to make math enjoyable for us and she was excited about being a mother and all this really personal stuff. She didn't say any quote specifically that stood out, but the whole hour or so of class she drilled into us that everyone is a person. I saw teachers as a bunch of lame asses sometimes, but you grow up and you see it's just a person trying to help a bunch of kids learn something. But I applied that to everyone. You don't know what people are going through. This crappy feeling resurfaced when Chadwick Boseman passed. Everyone tee-hee at him looking tired and frail, and then felt bad after knowing he had cancer for like 4 years. Miss Forrest was a good example to just be fucking nice. English person checking in. I was doing okay through secondary school and GCSEs, always got average/good grades, and parent-teacher was always the same. Mum and dad were very loving, but gradually mum's drinking got worse and the tension at home got worse, as well as my own MH problems that I didn't share. Got good GCSE grades and stayed on to do A-levels. By this point I didn't want to be home. Me and my brother would plan on running away all the time. I worked a lot to get out the house and gradually my grades started to drop. I put my parents off parent-teacher night, saying it would just be the same as always. Anyway, inevitable happened and I failed all my A-levels. I had planned on moving out to a nearby city and going to community college to do different A-levels, getting a job to pay my way, etc. I was chatting with my favorite teacher and he told me, well, good luck, but just so you know, people that redo A-levels like you don't do any better. I was so mad. He didn't know my background because me and my brother kept it quiet at school and I didn't really have any friends, but I trusted him. It made me so determined to go and succeed and prove him wrong, and I spent every day with his words in my head. Through hard work at both school and my job, I managed to get through and passed the second time and got an unconditional offer to my first choice university. They had previously rejected me the first time around. I made some amazing friends at uni, both in England and when I studied abroad in the US. Sadly, I never got to see my teacher to tell him what happened, but I remember his words to this day. I failed math from 3rd grade up until sophomore year of high school. My 3rd grade teacher gave me anxiety relating to asking for help when I was confused in math. I remember feeling really bad this one time about not understanding the material after asking for help from her, but it didn't end well. I refused to ask questions afterwards and would silently struggle and fail. I failed Algebra 1 when I first took it freshman year. The teacher I failed with never made me feel bad for the low grades I brought in when taking tests/completing assignments. I remember her telling me that she could see I was really trying to make progress to learn, and she would have me take it again with another teacher that had a different method of teaching. Sophomore year I really focused on trying to learn, taking notes, and worked on getting over my anxiety of asking questions. The way my new teacher taught accommodated multiple learning styles. I felt safe to come in after school and spend extra time to make sure I understood. My teacher told me she was very proud of my progress and was a very bright student. That I wasn't stupid, I was really smart, but just wasn't learning in the way that worked for me. I ended up getting my first A month in when the unit test rolled around. At the end of the year I was crying when my report card had AB where Algebra 1 was. I haven't failed math since. I ended up testing a few points under level 4 for algebra. and then took a year's worth of geometry in 6 weeks during summer school getting C's or better. One time I went abroad with my high school and my teachers refused to change me out of my homestay that had me in an attic with poor roofing and bugs were literally everywhere. I told one of the teachers that I had taken pictures of the bugs everywhere and she told me to delete them. I will admit, from the lack of support from the teachers, because all I wanted to do was sleep without waking up to 3 to 10 crushed bugs around me in the morning, I started to act out. We come back to the US and I have to have a meeting with the principal because these teachers want me suspended for acting out. The same teacher to whom I mentioned the fact that I took pictures, you know, the one that said to delete them, looks me square in my eyes and says during the suspension meeting, "Oh, that's odd, do you have any pictures of these bugs?" With a shitty grin. And I go, "You told me to delete them." She does an evil giggle and goes, "Well, I don't remember any of that." And I go, "That's okay, you thought I took them with my digital camera, but I actually took them with my disposable camera." And I reached in my bag and threw all the pictures on the table and I grinned back at her. I was very shy in high school, still am, and had a lot of health stuff going on mainly in my senior year. A teacher I had in 9th, 11th, and now 12th grade will always stick with me. Not only did he have my back during the times I would get the courage to speak in class to be spoken over, it was a small group and we were all close-knit, he also seemed to know that I was going through something senior year. I mean I did miss a lot of school, but he never explicitly said anything because I always kept up with my work and was still doing relatively well. So it gets to be the last week of school, and each year he would give each of his seniors a senior song. He claimed he didn't put much thought behind them and would just pick a song that came to him, but I don't know how true that was. It happens to be my turn, and he ends up playing Fight Song by Rachel Platten. I know, kind of cheesy, but at the time the song was newer, and something about it just stuck with me. It's like he was saying that he knew I was going through something but that I was a fighter. He ended up being my favorite teacher from high school because of the way he supported me and always gave me a chance to speak up. A few years after I graduate he ends up passing away in a tragic way. I still think about him a lot, especially when I hear Fight Song. It's like he gave me that song to carry with me and remember my strength. In my sophomore year of high school I took an AP history class. The teacher happened to be my history teacher in middle school, so she pretty much knew how to teach me as well as most of my classmates. Around the end of the second quarter, I fell into a deep depression. Long story short, I missed school for nearly 6 or so months of school. I came back but wasn't much better than I was before. The day I came back was the day we had to do a practice test for the AP exam. I did it and pretty much cried thinking that I fucked up big time. The next day we got them back and I had a 1 out of 5. During class, my teacher was telling all the students we were going to begin reviewing, and that on average, a student usually increases their score by about 2 when comparing the AP test and the practice test. For those that don't know, even getting a 3/5 isn't that great when applying for college credit. Hearing this, I kind of just gave up on the spot. I completely zoned out until the bell rang. I couldn't wait to go back into that depressive state so that I couldn't disappoint anyone anymore. I was prepared to wait until the next year to repeat and start the grade over, so I hopped out of my seat and tried to rush to the door. My teacher stopped me as soon as I got up and asked to speak with me. I thought I was in trouble for zoning out, so I kinda just stood and waited for everyone else to leave so we could speak. What I heard made me bawl my eyes out. I was one of those kids in advanced placement classes, but was never too serious about stuff, so I never passed any of the end of the year tests to get college credits for those AP classes despite getting passing grades in all of them. All except one. My calculus teacher had held study sessions at a restaurant for a couple weeks after school to do practice tests to prepare for the test, and on the final day of review before the exam she pulled me aside as I was leaving and said, "I am so proud of you, I know that a bunch of people misunderstand you and I know that subjects like this are hard, but I've seen you put in so much work and improve so drastically these past couple weeks. You are a bright young man that loves being goofy and making people laugh but can also get business done when you put your mind to it. You're going to do fine tomorrow, go show them what you're made of. I went on to barely pass that test XD, but I passed it and that same teacher would be the same person to write my letter of recommendation when I got the opportunity to study abroad. Mrs. McNulty will always be close to my heart. This being a day old it might not be seen, but when I was 12 I told my science teacher that I recited all 12 months in a row. I was very excited to be able to do that for the first time and had to tell someone. He said, and I quote, "Why are you excited, everyone can do that." Then he walked away. Will never forget that. I felt very stupid and just thought I was. I stopped trying at school and just figured if I'm that stupid it doesn't matter. My junior year of high school I had a teacher that noticed I was acing tests but basically zeroing out or just barely passing regular work. He asked what the problem was and could he help. I explained that I am basically behind and stupid compared to everyone, so what difference does it make? He explained that I wasn't stupid at all and why I would think that. I told him about my 7th grade teacher and what happened. How since then nothing has shown me different. He said that wasn't normal at all, and yes, everyone at that age should be able to recite the months, but if I couldn't there must be a reason. Parent-teacher conference and tests later. I have dyslexia. Mine manifests in the ability to put things in order. Alphabet, calendar year, grocery lists, etc. My brain mixes them up and it takes a lot of effort and repetition to keep the list in order. 4 years of thinking I was stupid, one teacher not worth a damn, and apparently none of my other teachers even bothering to notice. It took one teacher to make things horrible and one teacher to make things 100x better.